The twin moons of Xyron cast pale silver light across the dense jungle canopy, their radiance filtering through massive leaves that had never known the touch of Earth's sun. Captain Mira Sol crouched behind a fallen titan tree, her plasma rifle humming with barely contained energy as she watched the Talgron emerge from its den. The creature stood 3 meters tall at the shoulder, its chitinous armor gleaming wetly in the moonlight. 4 powerful arms ending in claws that could shred reinforced steel. Its 6 amber eyes swept the forest floor with predatory intelligence, searching for prey with the patience of an apex hunter. This was what humanity faced when they decided to plant colonies on the wild planets of the Outer Rim. Not just hostile environments, but ecosystems dominated by creatures that had evolved for millions of years without any natural predators. The Talgron was the undisputed king of Xyron's food chain, until humans arrived with their technology and insatiable curiosity. Mira's team had been tracking this particular specimen for 3 weeks. It was larger than any Talgron they'd encountered before, easily twice the size of the previous record holder. Dr. Kiro Velen, their ecological specialist, had insisted this could be a breeding alpha, possibly the only one in the sector. The Interplanetary Biological Conservation Treaty classified the Talgron as a protected species, allowing only limited hunting for research purposes. But research didn't put food on the table or satisfy humanity's ancient need to prove dominance over nature. "Neural pattern suggests it's about to enter hunting mode," whispered Lieutenant Jax through the comlink, his voice barely audible over the jungle's nocturnal symphony. The young soldier was pressed against a moss-covered boulder, 50 meters to Mira's left, his bioscanner painting the Talgron's movements in real time across their shared tactical display. "Confirmed," Mira replied, adjusting her grip on the rifle. "All units maintain position. We take it when it makes its move." The Talgron's massive head turned toward a cluster of bioluminescent flowers, drawn by movement in the undergrowth. Something small and furry darted between the roots of an ancient tree. Local prey, probably a scavenger disturbed by the human's presence. The apex predator moved with surprising grace. For something so large, each step calculated and silent, despite its bulk. Captain Reyes materialized from the shadows, behind a curtain of hanging vines, her camouflage suit shimmering as it adjusted to match the shifting patterns of light and shadow. She'd been Mira's second-in-command for 5 years, since their first deployment to the frontier worlds. Where Mira was impulsive and ambitious, Reyes provided steady tactical thinking and an anchor to protocol. "Target acquired." Reyes reported her sniper rifle tracking the Talgron's movement. "Range 87 meters. Wind negligible. Permission to engage." Mira felt the familiar rush of adrenaline that came before every major hunt. But something was different this time. The Talgron was magnificent, a perfect killing machine shaped by eons of evolution. Part of her wondered what it might taste like. The thought surprised her with its intensity, almost shameful in its primitive nature. "Negative," she said finally. "Wait for my signal." The Talgron pounced with liquid violence, its forearms spreading wide as it landed on its prey with a wet crunch. The creature began to feed, immediately tearing chunks of meat with surgical precision. This was when it was most vulnerable, distracted by its kill, focused on consumption rather than defense. "Now," Mira commanded. 4 plasma beams converged on the Talgron simultaneously. The creature's armor evolved to withstand claw, and fang offered little protection against concentrated energy weapons. It reared back with a shriek that shattered the night's peace, sending waves of bioluminescence racing through the surrounding flora as plants reacted to the sound. For a moment, it fought against the inevitable, its 6 eyes blazing with fury, and something that might have been confusion. Then it collapsed, steam rising from the holes burned through its carapace. The aftermath was strangely quiet. Even the jungle's ambient noise seemed muted, as if the ecosystem itself was processing the loss of one of its apex predators. Mira approached the fallen Talgron slowly, her weapon still raised. She'd seen wounded prey animals play dead before, though nothing this size had ever survived their coordinated assault. Biological functions ceased, reported Orion, the AI system that managed their camp's scientific instruments. Specimen terminated. Neural activity negative. Shall I begin post-mortem analysis protocols? Affirmative, Mira replied, but her attention was elsewhere. Up close, the Talgron was even more impressive than she'd imagined. The armor plating showed evidence of countless battles, scars from rival predators' marks, from territorial disputes. The accumulated history of a life lived at the very top of the food chain. Its meat would be dense with protein, evolved for explosive bursts of violence. "It's beautiful," Lieutenant Jack said, lowering his weapon as he approached. The young soldier was barely out of training his first deployment to the frontier worlds. Everything here amazed him. The alien ecology, the dangerous wildlife, the constant reminder that humanity was still a newcomer to these ancient systems. Beautiful and dangerous, Captain Reyes added, though she too seemed affected by the magnificent corpse. "Command will want a full genetic workup. Dr. Velin's going to have a field day with this specimen." The mention of the ecological specialist made Mira frown. Dr. Kiro Velin had been assigned to their expedition by the colonial administration officially to ensure compliance with conservation protocols. In practice, he'd been a constant source of friction, questioning every hunt, documenting every violation of what he considered proper ecological ethics. He'd already filed 3 formal complaints about their hunting practices, though nothing had come of them yet. "Speaking of Dr. Velin," Jax said nervously, "he's going to be furious when he finds out we took down the Alpha. He specifically requested we avoid any specimens over 2 meters. Dr. Velin can file as many reports as he likes," Mira replied, with more confidence than she felt. "Our mission is to clear apex predators from the colonization zone. This beast was well within our operational parameters." But as she spoke, an idea began to form. The Talgron's meat would be incredibly nutritious, packed with the kind of proteins and nutrients that made apex predators so successful. And there was something poetic about humans, the ultimate invasive species consuming the local apex predator. It would be a statement, a symbolic assertion of humanity's place at the top of the food chain, no matter what world they found themselves on. "Prep the anti-grav sled," she ordered. "We're taking this back to camp intact." "The whole thing?" Reyes raised an eyebrow. "Mira, that's got to be 2 tons of meat. The preservation units can't handle that much mass." "Not for preservation," Mira said, surprised by her own words. "For dinner." The silence that followed was broken only by the distant calls of night hunters and the soft hum of their equipment. Jax and Reyes exchanged glances, unsure if their captain was joking. "You want to eat it?" Jax asked finally. "Why not?" Mira found herself warming to the idea as she spoke. "Humans have been eating their conquered enemies since we lived in caves. This is just the next logical step." "Mira," Reyes said carefully, "the Conservation Treaty specifically prohibits consumption of protected species. And Dr. Velin will do what he always does, file reports and complain about human expansion," Mira interrupted. "But he wasn't here for the hunt. He doesn't understand what it means to face something like this and win." She gestured at the massive corpse. "This creature has been the unchallenged ruler of its territory for decades. Now, it's going to feed the humans who outplayed it." There was something intoxicating about the idea. Not just the novelty of tasting alien meat, but the symbolism of it. Every colony world was a statement that humanity wouldn't be confined to one system, one planet. They would spread across the galaxy, adapting, conquering, consuming whatever they encountered. The Talgron represented everything that stood in their way. Dangerous, primitive, unchanging. To eat it would be to literally internalize their victory over the planet's ancient order. "The spice caches from the Altair 7 expedition are still in storage," Jax said slowly, his excitement building. "Xenobotanical samples that were supposed to be shipped back to the research stations. Some of them were classified as flavoring compounds. You're suggesting we season the apex predator of an alien world with spices from another alien world? Reyes asked. I'm suggesting we make a statement, Mira replied. Humanity doesn't just survive on the frontier. We thrive. We take the best from every world and make it our own. The return journey to base camp took 4 hours with the massive Talgron's corpse secured to their heavy lift platform. As they moved through the jungle, Mira found herself planning the feast. It would need to be special. Not just cooked meat, but a presentation that honored what the creature had been while celebrating what humanity had accomplished. Dawn was breaking over the research station when they finally arrived, painting the prefabricated structures in shades of orange and gold. The base was a testament to human ingenuity, a complex of interlocking modules that could be deployed on any world equipped with everything needed to support 100 colonists for years. Atmospheric processors hummed quietly, gradually transforming the local air to something more suited to human lungs. Defensive turrets swept the perimeter, automatically programmed to identify and eliminate any indigenous life forms that posed a threat. Dr. Kirovelin was waiting for them at the main gate, his expression darkening as he took in the size of their kill. He was a tall, lean man with graying hair and the kind of intense eyes that seemed to catalog every detail of his environment. Unlike the military personnel, he wore civilian clothes, adapted for field work. Practical, but somehow softer, as if he refused to fully embrace the militaristic nature of frontier expansion. Captain Saul, he said formally, his slight accent marking him as someone from the inner colonies, where civilization remained more refined. I trust you've followed all protocols regarding the harvesting of protected specimens. Of course, Dr. Mira replied smoothly. All required documentation will be filed within the standard time frame. Dr. Velin walked around the platform examining the Talgron's corpse with the practiced eye of a scientist. His frown deepened as he noted its size and apparent age. This appears to be an alpha specimen. The conservation treaty specifically states that breeding individuals are not to be harvested, except in cases of immediate threat to human life. It was stalking our patrol route, Jack said quickly. Clearly aggressive behavior. Patrol route. Dr. Valen consulted his tablet, scrolling through recent mission logs. According to my records, your team was conducting a hunting expedition in Sector 7. That's prime Talgron territory. You went looking for this encounter. Mira stepped forward before the argument could escalate. Doctor, I appreciate your dedication to conservation protocols, but our mission here is to prepare this world for colonization. That means eliminating threats to human settlement. This Talgron was the dominant predator in a 50-kilometer radius. Its removal makes the entire region safer for our people. Safer for colonization, perhaps, Dr. Valen conceded. But this ecosystem has existed for millions of years. The Talgron plays a crucial role in maintaining the balance of... Doctor, Mira interrupted her patience, wearing thin. With respect, ecological balance is a luxury we can't afford on the frontier. We're not here to preserve alien ecosystems. We're here to make worlds habitable for humanity. As the argument continued, her team began unloading the Talgron's carcass. Mira watched them work and made her decision. She would prepare the meat herself personally. It would be her statement, not just as a captain, but as a human being who refused to be intimidated by alien worlds or bound by the cautious restrictions of civilian administrators. I'll be filing a report on this incident, Dr. Veland said finally. The colonial administration needs to know when conservation protocols are being violated. File whatever reports you like, Mira replied. But tonight, we're going to celebrate our successful hunt. You're welcome to join us for dinner, Doctor. I think you might find the menu educational. Dr. Veland's eyes narrowed. What exactly are you planning, Captain? Just a team meal to celebrate another successful mission, Mira said innocently. Nothing that violates any regulations. As Dr. Veland stalked away, muttering about bureaucratic cowboys and ecological vandalism, Mira turned to her team. Jax retrieved those Altair 7 spice samples. Reyes cleared the main dining hall and set up cooking stations. I want this done properly. You're really going through with this? Reyes asked. The creature was magnificent, Mira said, looking at the Talgron's massive form. It deserves to be honored. And what better way to honor an apex predator than to become part of the food chain ourselves? The next several hours passed in a blur of activity. Mira had expected preparing the Talgron to be similar to butchering large Earth animals, but the alien anatomy presented unique challenges. The creature's armor plating was fused with the musculature in complex patterns, requiring careful dissection to access the meat without damaging the unique protein structures Dr. Valen had identified in his preliminary scans. The meat itself was surprisingly colorful, deep reds and purples threaded with veins of golden yellow. When cut, it released an aroma that was simultaneously familiar and utterly alien. There were hints of iron and copper, suggesting a blood chemistry quite different from Earth animals, but also sweeter notes that reminded Mira of exotic fruits. The protein chains are incredibly complex, reported Orion, as Mira worked. Nutritional analysis suggests exceptional efficiency. This meat contains 3 times the essential amino acids of standard Earth beef. What about toxicity? Reyes asked, helping to separate meat from armor plating. Preliminary scans detect no compounds harmful to human physiology, the AI responded. However, I should note that comprehensive analysis would require— We're not here for a research project, Mira cut in. We're here for dinner. The Altair 7 spices proved to be a revelation. The xenobotanical samples included everything from subtle flavor enhancers that worked on human taste buds in unexpected ways, to more exotic compounds that seemed to interact directly with the nervous system, creating sensations that had no equivalent in Earth cuisine. Mira experimented with small samples, building a spice blend that complemented, rather than masked, the Talgron's natural flavors. As evening approached, word of the dinner spread throughout the base. What had started as a simple team meal began to attract attention from other departments. The geology team requested permission to attend. The atmospheric technicians asked to bring their off-duty personnel. Even some of the civilian contractors expressed interest. By sunset, nearly 60 people had gathered in the main dining hall. The room buzzed with conversation, part excitement, part nervousness, part fascination with the novelty of the situation. The Talgron meat had been prepared in several different ways. Some cuts smoked over wood from local trees. Others prepared as steaks with the alien spice blends. Still others slow-cooked into what could only be described as alien stew. Dr. Valen arrived just as Mira was putting the finishing touches on the main course. He looked around the crowded dining hall with poorly concealed disgust. "This is obscene," he said quietly to Mira. "You're turning the consumption of a protected species into a celebration." "I'm turning a successful hunt into a community meal," Mira replied, not looking up from her work. "Humans have been doing this since before civilization. It's what we are." "What we were," Dr. Valen corrected. "We're supposed to be better than this now. The conservation treaties exist for a reason." Mira finally looked at him. Really looked at him. She saw a man who had spent years studying alien ecosystems, who genuinely cared about preserving the incredible diversity of life the colonies had discovered. But she also saw someone who had never faced a Talgron in combat, who had never felt the rush of triumph that came from defeating something that powerful and dangerous. "Doctor," she said, "I'm going to ask you something, and I want you to really think about your answer. Do you honestly believe that Talgron would have hesitated to eat you if our positions were reversed?" "That's not the point." "That's exactly the point. This creature was a predator. It existed by killing and consuming other life forms. The only difference between us and it is that we're better at it." Dr. Valen was quiet for a moment, then shook his head. "The difference, Captain, is that we're supposed to be capable of more than base predatory instincts. We're supposed to be civilized." "Civilization is what allows us to be here at all," Mira replied. Civilization is what let us build ships that travel between stars, weapons that can kill apex predators, and food preparation techniques that can turn alien meat into a feast. Don't mistake restraint for virtue, Doctor." Before he could respond, Mira raised her voice to address the gathered crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for joining us tonight. We're here to celebrate not just a successful hunt, but what that hunt represents. Humanity's refusal to be cowed by any environment, any ecosystem, any challenge the universe throws at us." She gestured to the various dishes arrayed on the central table. "This creature ruled its domain for longer than any of us have been alive. It was faster, stronger, and better adapted to this world than we'll ever be. But it's still dead, and we're still here. That's not because we're the strongest or the fastest. It's because we're the most adaptable. We take what works from every world, every encounter, every challenge, and we make it part of who we are." Mira carved the first slice from the main roast, a massive section of Talgron haunch that had been cooking for hours. The meat was perfectly cooked, the alien spices having penetrated deep into the flesh, creating layers of flavor that seemed to shift with each bite. "To adaptation," she said, raising the first piece on her fork in a toast. "To conquest. To the human spirit that looks at the apex predator of an alien world and says, 'I wonder what that tastes like.'" The crowd laughed and applauded. The tension that had been building throughout the day seemed to break, replaced by a communal sense of adventure and shared transgression. Even Dr. Velen, though he remained standing apart from the group, watched with fascination as people began to sample the meat. The reactions were immediate and varied. Some of the colonists were clearly delighted by the flavor, rich, complex, with a texture that was somehow both familiar and entirely alien. Others found it challenging, the unfamiliar taste requiring adjustment. A few couldn't manage more than a bite or two, overwhelmed by the psychological barrier of eating something so recently alive and dangerous. Lieutenant Jax took a large bite and his eyes widened. "It's incredible. It's like the most perfectly seasoned steak, but there's something else. Something that makes you feel—" He struggled for words. "Powerful," suggested someone else. "Like you're taking its strength into yourself." Mira nodded, pleased by the reaction. That was exactly what she'd hoped for. Not just a meal, but a transformation. Every person in that room was now part of something larger, something that pushed the boundaries of what it meant to be human in the vastness of space. As the evening progressed, the mood became increasingly festive. Someone brought out fermented fruit wine made from local plants. Stories were shared, tales of close encounters with native wildlife, narrow escapes from environmental hazards, the small, daily victories of life on the frontier. The Talgron meat became the centerpiece not just of the meal, but of a broader celebration of human resilience and adaptability. Dr. Velen remained at the edge of the festivities, nursing a glass of wine and watching the proceedings with a mixture of horror and fascination. When Mira finally approached him, she found him staring at the remnants of the massive carcass. "How does it taste?" she asked. "I wouldn't know," he replied stiffly. "I haven't tried any." "Why not?" Dr. Velen turned to look at her, his expression unreadable. "Because once I do, I become complicit in this. Once I taste it, I can't pretend this is just another violation of protocol to report. I become part of whatever this is." Mira considered this. "What if I told you it tastes like victory? Then I'd say you're romanticizing the slaughter of a magnificent creature for your own ego." "And what if I told you it tastes like the future?" Dr. Velen was quiet for a long moment. Around them, the celebration continued. Colonists were examining pieces of the Talgron's armor, discussing the creature's biology, debating what other indigenous species might prove edible. The conversation had moved far beyond simple consumption. People were talking about sustainable hunting practices, about establishing food chains that included humanity at the apex, about what it truly meant to be at home on an alien world. "What kind of future?" Dr. Velen asked finally. "One where humanity doesn't just survive on these worlds. We thrive. We become part of the ecosystem, not just visitors exploiting it. We eat what the planet offers, we adapt to what it demands, and we become something new in the process. By wiping out apex predators, by taking our place among them. Mira gestured to the room, full of people, their faces flushed with wine and excitement, and the satisfaction of having shared something unprecedented. Look at them, Doctor. Every person in this room will remember this night for the rest of their lives. They'll tell their children about the time they ate the king of Zyron's food chain. And those children will grow up knowing that humanity doesn't bow to alien nature. We integrate with it, we transform it, and we transform ourselves in the process. Dr. Velen picked up a small piece of the Talgron meat, holding it up to the light. The spices had given it an almost jewel-like quality, gleaming with oils and seasonings from across the galaxy. There will be consequences, he said. The colonial administration, the conservation boards, the ecological review committees. They're not going to ignore this. Let them come, Mira replied. Let them see what we've built here. Let them taste what we've tasted. And then let them try to explain why humans should starve on worlds full of food just because some committee back on Earth thinks we should preserve alien ecosystems in amber. Dr. Velen took a small bite. His expression changed immediately. Surprise, then contemplation, then something that might have been understanding. It's not just food, he said slowly. No, Mira agreed. It's not. It's... He took another bite, chewing thoughtfully. It's a statement. It's evolution. The next morning brought consequences. Mira woke to find her communication console flashing with priority messages from Colonial Command. Dr. Velen had indeed filed his report, but it had been far more complex than the simple violation complaint she'd expected. Instead of a straightforward denunciation of her actions, the doctor had submitted a detailed analysis of the psychological and sociological implications of the Talgron feast. He'd documented the reactions of the colonists, the conversations that had emerged, the sense of community, and shared purpose that had developed around the shared meal. His conclusions were nuanced, acknowledging the clear violations of conservation protocol, while also noting the potential benefits to colonial morale and integration. The response from Colonial Command was swift and bureaucratic. Mira was relieved of active hunting duties pending a full investigation. The base was placed under administrative review. A team of investigators, ethicists, and xenobiologists was already en route from the inner colonies. But by then, it was too late to contain the story. News of the Apex Feast had spread throughout the colonial network. Some reports painted it as a barbaric violation of interspecies ethics. Others celebrated it as a bold step toward true human integration with alien worlds. The scientific community was divided, some calling for Mira's prosecution, others arguing that her actions represented important research into human psychological adaptation to alien environments. The investigation, when it finally arrived, found the base operating more efficiently than ever before. The colonists who had participated in the feast showed increased cohesion as a group, improved morale, and better adaptation to their environment. Even some of the most critical investigators had to admit that whatever Mira had done, it had worked. Dr. Velen testified on Mira's behalf, arguing that the consumption of the Talgron had been a watershed moment in human colonial development. For the first time, he told the review board, I watched humans stop thinking of themselves as aliens on an alien world and start thinking of themselves as part of the ecosystem. Captain Saul didn't just serve meat, she served integration. The final ruling was as complex as the situation itself. Mira was officially reprimanded for violating conservation protocols. The hunting of Talgron would remain restricted, but new guidelines were established for the sustainable integration of apex predator species into colonial food systems. Research teams were authorized to study the psychological and nutritional effects of consuming indigenous apex predators under controlled circumstances. Most importantly, a new category was added to the Interplanetary Biological Conservation Treaty: culinary integration species. These were apex predators that could be hunted and consumed in limited quantities as part of what the treaty called human ecological integration programs. Mira stood on the observation deck of her new command ship 3 months later, watching Xyron shrink in the viewport as they departed for their next assignment. The planet already looked different. New settlements were being established in the former Talgron territories, and the first reports from the culinary integration programs were promising. Humans and indigenous species were finding a new balance, one measured not just in conservation, but in the complex mathematics of who ate what and why. "Where to next, Captain?" asked her new second-in-command, a young officer fresh from the academy, who'd specifically requested assignment to Mira's unit after reading about the Xyron incident. "Kepler, 442b, Mira replied, consulting her orders. "Ocean world. The dominant predator is some kind of 30-meter amphibious creature called a leviathan. And the mission?" Mira smiled, remembering the taste of perfectly spiced Talgron meat and the faces of her colonists as they realized they were no longer visitors on an alien world, but residents of a new one. "The same mission it's always been, Lieutenant. Making ourselves at home." Behind them, Xyron continued its ancient rotation. Its jungles now patrolled by human settlements, and its apex predators sharing their kingdom with another species that had learned to see the universe not as a collection of resources to be exploited, but as a vast menu of possibilities to be explored. The twin moons rose over the jungle as they had for millions of years, but the scent that drifted through the canopy now carried hints of alien spices, and the apex predators that emerged to hunt moved through a forest that belonged finally and forever to no single species but to all who had learned to make it home. Humanity had found its place on Xyron, not by conquering nature, but by joining it, one carefully prepared bite at a time.